those things, and you probably should listen to me. That's kind of how he wraps it up at the end, in saying that there's no need in going out and searching for a bunch more knowledge and all these kind of things, that I literally have done a lot, and this is truth, and if you'll take what I've told you and to make application of it and its wisdom, it's going to benefit you. It's going to benefit you in your life. So then we talked about the purpose to explore the meaning of life, offering a philosophical reflection on life's transient nature and the limits of human knowledge. Obviously, we talked about that all through the book. And then we move it into the verses 2 and 3. Vanity of vanity, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Now that's kind of where he started this. We talked about that the Hebrew word there for vanity is havel, and it literally means a vapor, a breath, or a mist, signifying something fleeting, temporary, or futile. So as we've talked about this, and we've seen he's gone through the vanities several times. So as we saw that, what was not the final conclusion? We'll get to that in a minute. But as we went through the book, what was the preacher concluding about these vanities? Nathan?
That life is, not something to be tried or to try to take hold of. That everything is meaningless aside apart from God, and this life was not really meant to be our paradise. There are bad things that are going to happen here, even if you're a good person, and don't spend all your time being ambitious toward making it a paradise here, because you're just not going to achieve that.
Okay.
It's going to be the life to come. So don't try to take hold of life in that way.
Good point. Anybody else? I thought about it in a couple, in very similar, but two, and I wanted to get you guys' thoughts of what you thought. So we talked about a lot of times that we said that all was vanity except for God, right? That all these things are vanity without a relationship with God. That was kind of one slant that we took on it. But another one that I thought about as well, and this was actually what Macy kind of got at, is, as we look through here, all this stuff that he observes is real, right? I mean, this isn't just stuff he's making up. We think about all the things we've looked at with oppression and envy. We got what did we go through last week? The fun times of getting old, right? All of that is real. So kind of my other thought was he saying, that all of this is real. And if you're going to get through it, you need God. And maybe it's kind of both, right? That was kind of what I was thinking. I don't know, maybe I confused you when I was saying, but we kind of have said, all this is vanity without God, which is definitely true, but also the stuff is real, right? And we're going to have to get through it, and we need God to get through it, right? And that's what wisdom would teach us. So anybody have any nice deep thoughts they'd like to share on how you wrap it up? Go ahead, Rodney.
Also, there was the idea of there is enjoyment in these things, and it's a gift from God to have that. And it's really bad when a person doesn't serve God and all those and can't enjoy the good things that as a gift from God. And so he says, enjoy it. It is your portion here in this world to take those things for good.
And that's a great lead-in. My next point. Going back to my first slide. So from every time you walked in here on Sunday morning, you've seen this slide or maybe the one after it. But with the magnifying glass there, in search of the good life. And this is exactly what Rodney was getting at. Ultimately, what did the preacher conclude was the good life? Yeah, and enjoying the little things, right? Remember the cycles that we went through as we went through the book? That he'd go through kind of some vanities, and he would come back to, well, just enjoy your food and drink, or the wife of your youth, or these kind of things. He didn't say that the good life came from getting rich, or getting famous, or winning the Nobel Peace Prize. The things that men would typically say would make up the good life is not what he concluded, was it? It was really just enjoy the things that you toil for. Enjoy your food, your drink, your family, and get enjoyment from that in serving God. And then Rodney got to this one too. What was then the ultimate conclusion?
Fear God and keep His
Right, the verse 12, in 12:13, fear God and keep His commandments. And what was the accountability, that I didn't put it up here, that comes after that? Why should we fear God and keep His commandments? Yeah, because there's judgment coming, right? So ultimately that judgment is coming, and that this is the whole duty of man is to fear God and keep His commandments and keep that relationship with God. And I guess, and I think Macy brought this up a couple of times during the class that struck me that I hadn't really thought about a lot till I did study the book. There actually is a lot in this book about relationships, isn't it? About relationship with one another, with your family, with God, and the importance of that, and how wisdom teaches us that those relationships that we have are powerful and they're important in our lives, in living and finding the good life, to have those important relationships. So, anybody else on the final conclusion? Jordan?
I keep going back to don't waste your life trying to make straight what God made crooked.
Yeah.
I think that's what I get out of this, all 13 of these chapters. I keep coming back to that.
What chapter and verse was that? I don't remember. I know it was in there somewhere. But yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. Anybody else, buddy?
You were talking about the things that we're supposed to enjoy, and when you fear God and keep His commandments, those things are more enjoyable. I'm most happiest when I'm in, like, around a group of people, like when we have the potluck or the Friendsgiving or whatever. Like, that's when I'm probably most happiest, because I'm enjoying food, I'm enjoying people I love, and it's better.
And why do you think that's true? And buddy, you don't have to answer that. Anybody can answer. So, well, what comes with a relationship with God? And I guess I'm stretching a little bit here, so you're. But what comes if your life is right with God? What comes with that? Peace, that's the word I'm after. Peace comes with that. And when you have that peace that passeth understanding from the New Testament, and that's a great point, buddy. When we're assembled with one another or gathered with one another for whatever, when we're doing these things that He's talked about us enjoying, and we have that peace of knowing that, hey, I'm in a relationship with God. And ultimately, that is where I need to be. And I'm around all these other folks here who have that same relationship, who care about me. And then what else did we see throughout the book? Where's a great place to go when we're dealing with a bunch of those vanities and hard things that this book points out? Who do we go to? To God, and then who else? Our relationships, right? Back to that relationship. We can lean on those relationships to support us to make it through these things that are real. They're definitely real, all the things that He's gone through in this book. And we're likely to experience them. And I think that these two have said several times in teaching the younger people, life ain't fair. Right? Life is not fair, but we still got to get through it. And the support system that God has provided us is obviously Himself through prayer and study, and then the relationships we have with one another. Macy?
I was just thinking that when I think about this book and, just reading it, focusing on it, thinking about it the last few months, one thing I think is just so beautiful is that we see, probably Solomon, who had everything, and he's trying to give us this great amount of wisdom from what he's experienced. And I just think it's so beautiful that the summation of what it takes to be happy, or the search of a good life, is what God tells us not to be anxious about anything. He will give us all of these things. Like He's going to give us a church to worship with. We're going to have brethren. We're going to have food and drink. We don't have to worry about these things. And if we look for work, we'll find it. And I just think it's so beautiful that that everything that it takes to be happy, God promises that's going to be there. It's just a mindset shift that you just surrender to trust make it into something. God already made it into what it is if you just submit to what he has designed for us, and I just think that's really beautiful.
And that's back to your verse.
Yeah, it's 7 and 13. It says, consider the work of God. Who can make straight what he has made crooked? And then the following verse, verse 14 says, in the day of prosperity, be joyful, and in the day of adversity, consider God has made the one as well as the other, so that man may not find out anything to be after.
Yeah, good points. Anybody else? All right, well, we'll continue then. We'll take a look at a few of these questions. Go from there. So just the themes and recaps, we'll go through those. So in chapter 1, life under the sun is marked by fleetingness and vanity viewed from a purely human or earthly perspective. Wisdom in human efforts, though valuable, cannot fully satisfy the deepest questions of life. The pursuit of meaning apart from God is ultimately frustrating. It leads to a sense of futility. And then takeaways for us to reflect on the importance of aligning life with God's eternal purposes rather than merely earthly pursuits. We've talked about that a lot, right? That's that relationship with God and lining up with Him. And then encourage a shift from chasing temporary fulfillment to seeking deeper spiritual understanding and connection with God. Again, same thing, right? The stuff of the world is out there, and we're going to deal with it. And then some of it absolutely is important, but we can't put that ahead of our relationship with God. All right, so let's see. So what does the teacher mean when he says meaningless, meaningless, vanity, vanity? How does this perspective shape his view on life and his pursuits? I think we've answered that one many times. All right, in verses 4 through 11, the teacher discusses the cyclical nature of life. What are some aspects of life you notice repeating or cycling in your own experience, and how does this challenge or encourage your faith? That's a pretty good question. What kind of cycles do we, this makes me think of the Lion King, right? The circle of life. So have you seen the circle of life in your life? I mean, what's the obvious one?
Life and death.
Life and death, right? Where do we see, what's that right there? There's one over here somewhere. Babies, right? What do we see? We see new ones coming in. There's 2 right here that look alike. There's new ones coming in, and then there's old ones going out, right? I mean, that's the fact of the matter, right? And that's a cycle. And we see that going on. What else? Anything else you can think of? Buddy?
Well, every day I look at the sunrise, sunset, just up and down and up and down.
That's a great one. The earth keeps spinning and whizzing around the sun, doesn't it? Art?
The cycles of joy and challenge. There's always something one way and then moving the other way, moving one way, moving the other way. It's just managing those cycles.
Yeah, peaks and valleys, right? We're going to have peaks and valleys in our life. And again, wisdom, gaining wisdom from this book helps us deal with both of those, right? It's important for us to deal with the peaks well, just like we have to deal with the valleys well, isn't it, in our life? But, Danny?
It's an interesting way you put it, and I think it's true in this book. I don't think we think that much, or at least I don't, about dealing with the good times, right? That you temper yourself and think about them and keep it in that perspective. We're just having fun, right? It's a good times, but it's really true in this book that there's a wise approach to it all.
Yeah. And there's definitely wisdom to thankfulness, isn't it? In being thankful during the good times. Anybody else? Oh, go ahead, Jason.
Relationships, love, and disappointment,
Yeah.
just goes back.
Yeah, Jason?
Well, I guess sometimes, we can, I don't know, maybe perhaps be a little frustrated with the repetition of life and monotony, I guess, or whatever, just see the same things happening over and over again every day, people being people and doing what they do, and all of that, and not to get too overcome with that, the negativity of that, but, just to remember there's something greater to come. There's such a much, much better world coming for us, forever, just, to get tired of this old world, you might think. There's something much better to come, So we have to be careful about struggling with those frustrations of life, how it is, those will be there. But the Ecclesiastes reminds us of the blessings. We're already talking about those. But we also can be reminded when this old world gets to us, we've got something much better coming our way.
Yeah, good point. Teresa?
To add to that, my dad always set this expectation when we were young, and it was really, he did it lightheartedly, but it's very true. He said, whenever he interactions are with me, because I have something to look forward to and hope in God, and I just need to focus on the relationship I have with God.
Yeah, a good point. Anybody else? Hey, that third one there, I think, is actually what we've been talking about, how we deal with that with God. Okay, let's go. So chapter 2, pleasure, material success, wisdom, and toil are ultimately meaningless when pursued as ends in themselves. Lasting meaning is found only when life is viewed in relationship with God. Takeaway, reflect on your own pursuits of pleasure, success, and wisdom, and consider whether they are seeking ultimate fulfillment in God or in temporary things. That's a good one, isn't it? To think about, why am I doing this? Or when I do, maybe another way to say that is, when I'm doing this, who am I intending to bring glory to? Yeah, because lots of folks are out to bring glory to themselves, right? To build themselves up. Whereas Christians, we should be striving to bring glory to God, right, in the things we're doing. Bring glory to God and we build ourselves up through that, as well as building up our brethren. So let's see what our questions are here. The teacher examines the pursuit of pleasure, wealth, and accomplishments. Why does he find these things ultimately unsatisfying?
They're fleeting.
They're fleeting. Good answer. Anything else? Art?
The pursuits of those things in the world are never contentment. There's always a bigger house, a nicer car, a nicer outfit, or more money. There's always a bigger number to pursue. You never get fulfillment in it. When the world looks after one thing and they accomplish it, they're just looking after the next thing and they lose interest in the first.
Right, for football fans, ask Lane Kiffin about that one, right? So, Jason, did you have your hand up? Okay. Anybody else? Maisie?
Kind of the same thing, that it says that there's a cost to accumulating all those things. Like with increased knowledge comes increased vexation, I think. Sleepless nights and all these
Yeah.
things.
Ready?
They don't compare to what God gives us and provides for us. They're incomparable. But this is garbage compared to what God can provide.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Let's see. What does the teacher mean by a man may do his work with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, but he must leave it to one who has not worked for it? How does this relate to our views on success and legacy? We talked about it. I remember talking about this one in class. You can't take it with you. And is there any guarantee that the folks that you're going to leave it to or get it after you are going to value it or care for it like you did? No. Absolutely not, is it? And there's and that's the vanity in it, right? That we can spend so much time either accumulating wealth for our children or building this great house or whatever, or gardens or what, and keeping them perfectly. And the next person comes along, just spends all your money, lets it go, and ultimately, what did it really mean? And I think that's what we're getting at there. What does it mean to enjoy life in the context of Ecclesiastes 2? How can we reconcile the enjoyment of life with the awareness of life's temporary nature? I think we've talked about this quite a bit, right? That's kind of coming back to the little things. Enjoy your family. Enjoy your eating and drinking. The things that your toil brings you daily. And be able to enjoy those things with the recognition that all this is fleeting and ultimately being in a relationship with God is what's important. All right, Ecclesiastes 3. Life's seasons, while often unpredictable and beyond our control, are governed by God's sovereign will. We are limited in our understanding of time and eternity, but we can trust that God's timing is perfect. So our takeaways: embrace the different seasons of life, trust in God's plan, and find joy in the present while acknowledging the mystery of the future. So let's see, verses 1 through 8, the teacher reflects on the different seasons of life. How does recognizing that everything has a time help us cope with changes we experience? So remember that, I think Rodney actually taught this class. I think I was out. So there's a time for what? Everything, right? That's the point. He goes through all the contrast, right? War and peace, and there are lots of different things in there. And why is it important to recognize that? And how does that help us cope? Daniel?
The recognition that bad times don't last forever. So in other words, difficult things that you're going through aren't going to be permanent. They ebb and flow. And it's the same thing with the good things. We
recently we've had the opportunity to talk with someone who's dealing with some difficulties in life, and one of the things that I saw that they were having difficulty with was they had this feeling that no one has ever gone through what I'm going through. And it actually, I think that there's a lot to, therapeutically, there's a lot to understanding that you're not the first to ever get through this and to move through it. And to understand that there is an end to it, like Daniel said. That it's important to note that all of these things have a time, including grief, including bad things. All of it does. And you're not the first.
Okay. That's the other hand over here. All right. Let's see. What does it mean to do good and find happiness in the midst of life's uncertainties? How do we do this? How do we live this out in our daily lives? I think we talked about that a lot, right? This is just our, enjoying the little things, enjoying our relationships in life. The teacher speaks of God's purpose in everything. How do we respond to the tension between our desires and God's plan, especially when we face difficulties or challenges? Now, that's a pretty good one. Prayer? Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? I think, again, this stuff is real. It's difficult. When you have some plans in life that are definitely, there's nothing wrong with them, right? It's something that you want, something you want to do, your desire, you're putting effort into it, and it just don't work out for some reason. And how do you balance that with God's plan? Rodney, you look like you want to say something.
Well, I think it's all, as he points out, you just got to fear God and keep His commandments. It's a matter of trust and realization that God is in control. Not that God necessarily says, Rodney's going to get up and drink coffee this morning, out of this cup, that kind of thing. But at the same time, there are aspects in the world where it says God does allow bad things to happen. God does allow it and brings good things into our lives. And we have to accept that and realize we're mortal. We are subject to so much that, and just accept God and trust Him.
And ultimately, why? What's the source of all the bad stuff? Sin, right? Again, just the fact of the matter is we live in a corrupted world, right? That's corrupted by sin. And because of that, we may be affected with it totally us not having anything to do with it, right? That's just part of it. And we have to lean on God and lean on our relationships when we're dealing with those things, just like what Art was talking about a second ago. Clint?
It really struck me in this book how many times Solomon circled back to, the topic of control. We can't know the future. We can't control the future. Good things are going to happen. Bad things are going to happen. And, it's funny. We're so focused on controlling as much as we can control that we can try to control our stuff after death. And there's an extent that you can do that, but even our entire legal system when it comes to property, there are limits on how much you can control. You try to control it too much, and the court's not going to enforce it. They're going to say that's a, quote, unreasonable restraint on alienation. You can only control it so much, but yeah, that's just, our nature as humans. We want to control the future as much as we can. We want to set ourselves up for a good life. But Solomon just says over and over and over again, you can't control it. Good things are going to happen in life, but you know what bad things are going to happen in life. I go back to that cyclical nature. Mm-hmm. That's life. It's going to happen, and that's why it's important to, despite not knowing what's going to happen, to enjoy the little things, enjoy the food and drink, enjoy life. And sometimes you have to choose to do that more than others because there are going to be bad times.
Yeah. Good point. Jason?
Well, just one thing, keep in mind, it may be difficult at times when we find ourselves having difficulty trusting in God or accepting the direction He's set out for us. We have to remember He has our best interest in mind. In His position that He has for us much better what we have in mind for ourselves because He loves us and His ways are higher than our ways. Knowledge is much greater than ours, to say the least. So this is a lesson for me, I'm preaching to me right now, as I say this thing, but it's just keeping in mind who it is, whose will we're accepting. It's not someone that wants your demise. They want the best, the very best for you. And so keeping that in mind can make it easier to help with that trust, faith.
That's the other hand. Tom?
You know, we're told in the New Testament, whatever situation you find yourself, be content. We have a promise that all things are going to work together for good. We don't know exactly what that means, how that's going to work together for good, but it will if we love God and keep His commandments.
Morgan?
I thought the New Testament really speaks to this well in James chapter 4. At the end of chapter 4, it says, "Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we'll go into such and such a town. We'll spend a year there, we'll trade, we'll make a profit. Yet you don't know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? You're a mist that appears for a little time, then it vanishes," just like we've been talking about. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live, and we will do this or that.
Good point. Did I see a hand over here? No. Okay, anybody else? All right, so chapter 4. This chapter contrasts the harsh realities of oppression and isolation with the value of relationships and the fleeting nature of power and popularity. It emphasizes the importance of companionship, community, and contentment over the futile pursuits of wealth, power, and envy-driven toil. So our takeaways were reflect on the importance of relationships and mutual support in your lives. And we've talked, again, this is, like I said, this one struck me as to how much this rolled into the book of the importance of our relationships in our lives. Invest in meaningful relationships, value wisdom over power, and find contentment in simplicity rather than chasing after material gain. Okay, so number 1, the teacher discusses the unfairness of life. How do you deal with feelings of injustice or frustration in the world around you? Anybody want to say anything else? We've hit that several times. I like, life's not fairer than you die. So, but yeah, again, the way we dealing with it is that perspective setting, right? Just like Jason just talked about. We have a relationship with God. We know He's looking out for our best interest, and the unfairness that comes along, we lean on Him as we deal with it. Number 2, how does the teacher's observation of human ambition and the competition between people challenge our approach to success in relationships? We talked about this. Remember, there's a verse in there that says something to the effect of, some people are just trying to do this to be better than their neighbor or to be better than somebody else, right? It's like they're trying to get the bigger house or the better car or more money or whatever. So how does that, how does that challenge our approach to success in relationships, thinking about that? Go ahead, Tom.
We've got to have our priorities in the right place and know what the relationship that will provide the correct priority, and then take that relationship.
Yeah, okay. I think there's probably been a time where all of us have been in relationships that were competitive. Where there is some one-upmanship going on. And ultimately, how much fun is that? Well, when you're the one up, maybe it's kind of fun, but when you're not, it's not so much fun. When I think about here, as well, I think about as Christians, we're told to rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep, right? That we're not out to be better than one another or strive to one up one another. We're there to support one another in whatever's going on in our lives. It should be our approach to success in relationships. Anybody have any other? Go ahead, Mason.
I think in this, it said something about like a handful of quietness is better than 2 hands full of somebody striving after life, basically. And I think there is something to be said of kind of the same thing where it's like you build up all this stuff and now you're just overburdened constantly by what you've built and what you have to maintain and all this. And I think, we all should be in a pursuit of an unhurried life, to not let things get in the way of our spiritual life, because that really, there's just so much joy in an unhurried morning and a peaceful start to the day and these things that if you just keep accumulating more and more, why do that? You're just going to be tied up and tied down and overburdened compared to somebody who might just be content with less.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And again, talking about Jay being preached to, yeah, I'm a very regimented, process-oriented person. So when things don't go according to my process, yeah, I'm not at peace. And that's something I have to work on, being able to deal with that, right? Even just little things that, you get to work one day and the doors of the office are all locked. And you're like, oh, now I got to walk all the way around the front to get in. Well, how long does that take, really? 2 minutes. But it's just kind of, that's a good point, that we get we get in ruts, we get in things, and we need to be able to just enjoy the peace. Anybody else?
Competition, it seems like it's always something else,
Yeah.
City's got the tallest building, well then it's over here, and
Yeah.
then they build another one, it's like that among people,
Yeah.
whether your neighbor has a car and then there's another one.
Yeah, there's always, like Art said earlier, there's always a bigger car and bigger house in there. Go ahead, Jordan.
I think this is where 4 through 7 or 8, he starts listing a lot of, hey guys, avoid the extremes. So, even I think in 8, he mentions do not be overly righteous or overly wicked. And I told the kids that they're like, what do you think about being overly righteous? And then I hinted at maybe we see examples of Pharisees and try to correlate that into being overly righteous. But it's the same deal. He says avoid the extremes because there's sin there. Regardless of where you're looking at, that's where you find sin is in the extremes. Just as verse 5 says, the fool folds his hands and eats his own flesh. Well, we don't want to be idle and stagnant, not doing anything. But at the same time, we don't want to work so hard because of envy of our neighbor that we've got 2 hands full of vanity and striving after the wind. Sometimes, so avoid those extremes.
Good point. Bart?
It's interesting too. Trying to teach this to children is difficult, but understanding that you don't actually live in the fishbowl you think you do. And this is an old saying, but the idea that when you're in your 20s, you care about what everybody else thinks about you, what you're wearing, what you're doing, how you're acting. When you're in your 30s, you say, I don't care about what other people think about me. But by the time you pass 40 or 50, you realize no one's ever been thinking about you at all. and the truth is, we need to live our lives with the idea that what God thinks about us is what matters. And that's, obviously, that's a challenge.
Yeah, good point. Let's see. In verses 9 through 12, the teacher highlights the importance of companionship and community. How can we apply the wisdom of 2 or better than 1 in our relationship and work environments? I think we've talked about that several times, right? It's the strength in being able to lean on someone, right? Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of the rope wound up and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we're stronger, we're better when we're together and working in relationships, right? Go ahead, buddy.
I don't remember how long ago it was, but somebody was teaching about, I don't know if it was in a sermon or in a lesson, but one person can do the work of one person. 2 people can do the work of 3 people. And so, the more you add, the more work, 3 people can do the work of 5 people. The work gets easier the more people you add.
Yeah, that's a good point. Art?
It's another little coined phrase, but I heard this the other day in a show, and I thought it was a good comparison. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, then go with someone else. And I think that there's a truth to companionship and partnership that God obviously recognizes for us, is we need to go far. And so we need to make those relationships work.
Good point. Anybody else? John?
I think it's great. I mean, it's obviously a good thing to have a relationship with someone you can confide in and go to when you're having problems. But it's also something you need to work on, is to be the person that someone else can come to with their problems.
Yeah, that's a good point. Go both ways. All right, let's see. Chapter 5. Themes were this chapter emphasizes the importance of reverence and worship, the utility of wealth and materialism, and the joy of contentment. It teaches that our words and actions before God matter, and that true satisfaction comes from living a simple, content life focused on God's gifts. Our takeaways: pursue a life of reverence toward God, avoid the traps of materialism, and embrace contentment in the everyday blessings God provides. Find joy in work relationships and worship, trusting God for ultimate fulfillment. So again, this chapter obviously is a circle back chapter, right, on the things that are good for us in our lives. So in verses 1 through 7, the teacher cautions about making promises to God. What does it mean to fear God in our relationship with Him, especially in our vows and promises? I mean, I know growing up, anyway, yeah, I heard people would say, God, if you'll just do this, then I'll never do this, that, or the other again, or those kind. You ever heard people make vows like that? So how should we deal with that? Is that okay? Should we do that? Should we not?
Well, if you make a vow, the Bible's pretty clear, you better keep it, because God hears it and He doesn't take that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a flippant thing to do, is it? That this is important in our relationship, and we might want to be careful if we are saying things flippantly towards God. The teacher observes the futility of wealth and materialism. How do we balance enjoying material blessings with the recognition that they cannot provide lasting fulfillment? I think we've talked about that several times. What does it mean to accept our lot and find satisfaction in our work? How can we find peace in our current circumstances rather than constantly striving for more? Tom hit that a minute ago, right? About contentment. Anybody have any practical guide for being content they'd like to share with us real quick? Go ahead, Macy.
I don't know if I have the full answer or anything, but one thing I've focused on, like actually just since being a mother in general, I've realized that so many things that steal my joy in a day will be something that's not even my current reality. It'll be something that's just not even, it's just something that I'm not trusting God to work out in the future, or that I'm just not surrendering over to God. So a lot of times I'll just wake up, and pray before anyone else rises in my home. God, just wake me up in my reality today. I have 3 healthy people in my household that I get to serve and all these things, and I just think the contentment is just actually notice what's around you and quit worrying about what hasn't happened or what might happen, which we see that theme in the Bible a lot, but I think it's something that, when you love someone so much, and in motherhood is when it really started hitting me. It's like, how many times do I ruin my day worrying about something that's not even reality?
Yeah.
And to wake up in that perspective.
That's a good point. Well, Rhonda says that if I'm stressing on something, is that going to matter in 10 years? Probably not. That's a good point. Anybody else? All right, so chapter 6, our theme. Where this chapter focuses on the futility of wealth, long life, and insatiable desires that are not accompanied by contentment and the ability to enjoy God's blessings. It emphasizes the importance of contentment and humility in the face of life's mysteries and limitations. So our takeaways reflect on the pursuit of wealth, status, and success. Do you find joy and contentment in what you already have, or are you constantly chasing for more? And trusting God's sovereignty, embrace contentment, and focus on living a meaningful life rather than accumulating external success. So the teacher reflects on the dissatisfaction of wealth and achievement. How does the perspective challenge our culture's emphasis on material success and accumulation? Yeah, I think we've talked about that several times, and that's just a wrong focus, isn't it? What does the teacher mean when he says that a man's days are but a shadow? How does this view of life shape the way we spend our time and prioritize what truly matters? And that gets, go ahead, Tom.
We have a very short time on earth. Use it wisely.
See, was there a hand over? All right. Then, how can we make peace with the limits and uncertainties of life, especially in terms of the things we desire but cannot control? Hit that several times, but where is the peace? With God, right? All right. All right, we'll do one more real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. This chapter emphasizes the value of wisdom, the complexities of life, and the necessity of living with balance and humility. It teaches that wisdom, while powerful, does not provide all the answers, and life's contradictions and uncertainties are best met with trust in God's sovereignty. So our takeaways: life is full of contradictions, and wisdom helps us navigate them. Wisdom includes recognizing our limitations and living humbly. And trust in God's control over life's uncertainties. Embrace both life and joy and sorrow as opportunities for growth. So our time is up. So I'd just like to thank everybody for their participation in this class. I was actually talking about it with a couple of ladies up front. I really enjoyed teaching this because of you guys. The comment, you guys have all great participation and great wisdom that you've brought into our class. So thank you for that. And again, we look forward to the Johns and the Peters coming up in our next classes in here in the auditorium. So thank you.